Wells Fargo presents one of the surest ways to grow your money. A Wells Fargo CD account, where you can earn a 5.00% annual percentage yield on an 11-month term with a minimum opening deposit of $5,000. Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/CD rates to open a CD account and start growing your savings with us.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Hey, it's Storyworthy. Today on the show, writer Kristine Kimmel talks about what it's like working on a cruise ship.
And so the guy's like, you know this is a crew position, right? And I was like, well, yeah, working as a server, and I have server experience. And he's like, it's a very tough job. Like, we don't usually hire Americans for these positions. Why don't you reapply for a staff position and wait for one of those to open up? And I was like, I'm ready for my international adventure to begin. The main first thing I remember was how tiny the hallways were down on those lower levels where the crew sleeps, and that the hallway getting to my room was full of rotting garbage.
Today on the show, writer Kristine Kimmel talks about working on a cruise ship. Stay close.
Hey, this is Kristine Kimmel, and you're listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Christine Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of the show or a brand new listener, welcome to Storyworthy. I hope you guys enjoyed the show last week with author Teresa Strasser. Holy cow, what a wonderful episode, because Teresa wrote a new book called Making It Home, Lessons from a Season of Little League. And it is such a wonderful book, and we talked a lot about it. And we also talked a little bit about Adam Carolla, because Teresa was his sidekick for quite a long time. And we talked about her living in Phoenix. Anyway, it's a great episode. It's actually like an hour and a half long, which is quite long for Storyworthy. But you know what, you guys? Sometimes that's just the way it goes. And with Teresa Strasser, it was definitely that way. So go back, you guys. Listen to author Teresa Strasser from last week, but not today. Stay with me now, because today I'm bringing back a story from writer Kristine Kimmel. It is such a funny story and super interesting, and a lot of people loved it. I know that because I see the downloads. So I see how many people are listening. And this episode by Kristine, in which she talks about working on a cruise ship, has gotten a lot of downloads. I know you guys are going to like it. It first aired in 2021, and we're bringing it back. Now, Kristine Kimmel is a great writer. She's written for all sorts of television shows on NBC, the E! Network, and FX. Kristine is also the co-host of the show How to Survive with Danielle and Kristine, and it is very entertaining. They talk about how to survive, whether it could be like an earthquake or a tornado, but they pair it with, you know, the comedians are the guests, like I was a guest, and they pair it with something else that happened. Like my episode was how to survive a flood. And they talked about, you know, how to survive a real flood. But before that, they let me tell my story about how I peed my pants at a Steeler game. Yeah, that's right. So anyway, a lot of fun. How to Survive with Danielle and Kristine. And you guys don't forget to head over to the website, storyworthypodcast.com, and join my mailing list. Why not? It's there. And remember that Story Smash, the storytelling game show, is back on Saturday, September 23rd. The tickets aren't on sale yet, but they will be. So you can always go over to storysmashshow.com and check it out. All right, you guys, without any further ado, please put your hands together for Kristine Kimmel.
I'm going to tell you the story about my misadventure working on a cruise ship. So first, I need to explain that I grew up in a very small town, Wadsworth, Ohio, and I was the first in my family to go to college, so I really hadn't traveled. I had no idea what I was supposed to do with my life. I was majoring in psychology at the University of Akron, mostly to figure myself out, and I was cycling through all these different jobs through my time in college to support myself and pay for school. I worked at a factory, I worked as a waitress, I worked as a bartender, an office manager, and towards the end of my 7 years of college, Yes, that's right. 7 years to get a 4-year degree because I loved college that much. I started working at this little coffee shop in the town square of my hometown. Now, this coffee shop was a very big deal in Wadsworth because it had lattes and cappuccinos, and people would come in and get espressos. And like most surface jobs, it was occasionally fine and enjoyable, but mostly it was hell on earth. And while there, because I was getting so close to graduating, I start imagining this dream of international travel after graduation. Now, what I really wanted to do was move to Los Angeles and write and perform and do comedy and write on a sitcom or be on a sitcom, do stand-up. I basically wanted to be where they made Cheers. And this seemed reasonable to me as like flying to the moon or, you know, like waking up one morning and finding out that like I was related to Princess Diana or something. So instead I thought, okay, I'm going to have this big blowout travel experience and that's going to get this crazy idea out of my system. And then, you know, I can just be really into gardening and craft projects. Like my Christmas newsletter is going to kill. The problem with this big crazy travel idea was that I didn't have any money for traveling because I was working my ass off to pay rent and pay for college. And even with all that, I was still accruing student loan debt. And my boss, Gerard, at the coffee shop, so he's always talking about his glory days on the cruise ship because he'd worked on the cruise ship before he opened his coffee shop. He was like a head baker or, I don't know, head of something. And he'd be like, oh, the fun, those amazing days on the high seas. I think he had sex with a lot of the female guests. And I think he probably said that. This is why I'm thinking that. And so in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I should work on a cruise ship. I'd be able to travel the world and get paid. And I asked Gerard if he could connect me, you know, with someone for an interview. And he's like, absolutely. And I think he might have said, you know, like the work's really hard. But I was like, I'm not scared of that. I worked, you know, back-to-back shifts at 2 different bars. I'd worked full-time in a factory. I worked at Kmart, for God's sake. Like, how hard could this be? So he gets me an interview. This is after I've graduated from college. I fly to Miami, and I'm like, I can't believe, like, my life as an international traveler is really happening. You know, I'd faxed everything. Like, this was when you still fax stuff. And I meet with a man in the office, and right away, he starts trying to talk me out of it. He's like...
Wait a second. Who is this for?
Oh, sorry. What company?
Cruise line, or yeah.
Yes, this is for a cruise line, Royal Caribbean.
Oh, for Royal Caribbean, okay.
Yes.
Is that who your boss had worked for?
Yes. Sorry if I didn't make that clear.
No, it's okay. I'm just curious. I was wondering because I think there are a lot of cruise hubs in Miami, aren't there?
Yeah, I think they're
it's like a big place for cruise offices.
It's like a main hub, I think. So
yeah, for all the offices, the people that book things, and the money people, and all that.
Miami is the hub.
Yeah.
And so the guy's like, you know, this is a crew position, right? And I was like, well, yeah, working as a server, and I have server experience. And he's like, it's a very tough job. Like, we don't usually hire Americans for these positions. Why don't you reapply for a staff position and wait for one of those to open up? And I was like, I'm ready for my international adventure to begin. So, no, I want this crew job that I've already got. And so he asked me, like, if I'm sure, like, about 100 more times, like, it kind of felt like, you know, like how in horror movies, like before the couple signs the lease on the house full of demons. And I was like, nope, I'm good. Grab my uniform, my badge. And he's like, all right, well, report to the ship 4 a.m. the next morning. So I don't really remember, you know, like, I don't even know how I found the ship. I don't have any memories of, you know, getting on the ship. The main first thing I remember was how tiny the hallways were down on those lower levels where the crew sleeps. And that the hallway getting to my room was full of rotting garbage. And I was like, okay, you know what? That's fine. You know, it's probably normal rotting garbage. It's not going to let this ruin my vision of my new fancy life. And my roommate was this pretty young Latinx woman who walked with me to my first job shift, which I was like, that's so nice. Like, you know, my shift starts at 5 a.m. and she's walking me. And we were stepping over the garbage, and she says to me, now, honey, never walk down these halls alone. girls have been getting raped. And I was like, this really isn't going how I pictured it in my head. So at breakfast, my manager could not get over the fact that I was American. So everyone wears a badge to say where they're from, and I was the only American, and other crew members were stopping me, and then they'd call over other crew members that they were friends, and they were like, can you believe this? An American. One was like, I worked with an American guy once. Yeah, he didn't make it. And I was like, he died? Oh, no. He just only lasted like a week. And then someone handed me a back brace and showed me how to lift one of those giant trays. And in my head, I was like, oh, shit, this is really heavy. And then they were like, wait, we still have to put some plates on it. So after my first 5-hour breakfast shift from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., I was like totally crushed. And they gave me a break until 11, and then I went back for another 3-hour lunch shift, and then dinner from 5 to 8 p.m. And then I got to go back to my cot until 11:45 p.m., rushed back to work for the midnight buffet from 12 to 3 a.m., and then up at 5 a.m., and it all starts back up again.
Oh, my gosh. Wait a second, just real quick. How many servers would you say? And so it's basically round the clock. You don't stop.
You don't
Except
stop.
for a couple small breaks.
Yeah.
And how many servers and how many people are on the ship?
I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you how many people were on the ship because you're kind of insulated, but I mean, there probably were like maybe 30 of us. It was a
30 crew members. Wait a minute, 30 crew members?
Well, in my little because you're managed by one person and you're doing your own shift, and there's your little group of people, and then there's probably other groups of people doing other shifts. Like my roommate had different shifts, so there was just our group did this shift, and I think it was about 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, and then on the 7th day you get a half day off.
Wow.
And I think the pay was maybe like $3.50 an hour. So here's the thing they don't tell you. When you're out on the water, you're in international waters. You're not protected by any labor laws. So they can do whatever they want. They can work you however they want. So that's why the guy was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And I was like, I'm in trouble. This is not, I can't. So
the first day or the second day, you knew you were in trouble?
So at first I was like, well, I'm going to prove all these, they're Filipinos and Ghanaians and Moroccans. And I'm like, I'm going to show them. I can do this. But like by day 2, I was like, there's no way. I'm not built like, I don't know how anyone could do this. So day 3, I've got these huge dark circles under my eyes because I'm not sleeping. My roommate's working different shifts than I am. And it's not, I can't really sleep. I'm super stressed. I've never slept on a ship before. I'm a little bit, not totally seasick, but just feeling a little nauseated. Mm-hmm. The guy in the room opposite of ours liked to blast Cat Stevens, of all things, which is a really weird choice to blast, Yeah. So even to this day, when I hear Wild World, I can still smell rotting garbage. Oh. So by day 4, I'm like, I got to get out of this. What do? I signed a contract for 6 months.
Wow.
I'm going to die serving Canadian scrambled eggs. So day 5, I'm broke and not mentally and physically. And I think in the crew mess hall, they're serving some kind of fish head soup or something crazy. The food is it really looks like food they'd serve in a prison to the people that work crew. You don't get to eat what the people that are on the ship eat.
No, you eat the scraps, really.
You eat scraps. And I was like, okay, my tough ass Midwestern blue collar factory work and bartending jobs, I'm still a weak American. I admit it. And so I go to some office on the ship, probably human resources. I don't know. It could have been Gopher from the Love Boat. And I'm just sobbing, I think, before he even opens the door. And I'm like, I have to get off this ship. Things aren't working out. He's very nice. He's like, did something happen? And I was like, no, I can't handle it. And he's like, oh, right. You're the American that they put in crew. I think everyone knew about me, And so he's like, would it maybe make you feel better to see some other Americans? which I thought was so funny. It's like I'd been kept prisoner of war, and, you know, like when you're in war and you just see another American person and that's like going to make you feel better. But I was like, yes. So he takes me to the staff lounge. And so, I mean, this was a long time ago, but like, I swear, thinking back now, it felt like I was going into the lobby of the W Hotel. It was like full of windows facing the sea, and people are smiling and laughing and like looking relaxed. And I was like, what in the fresh hell is this? And two people come over and they're like, their hair's clean and they have these big white teeth smiles. I mean, they just like looked like they belonged on television. And I'm standing there, you know, like snorting from just crying, and like I'm all like hunched over from my back hurting. And I mean, I'm just assuming he's like, you know, this woman's in the middle of a psychotic break, so maybe you can just help her out a little bit. And they bring me over to this big round table where they're all sitting and having drinks, and they ask me if I want a cocktail. And in the middle of the table is this giant bowl of beautiful strawberries. And I just burst into tears, and everyone is smiling and laughing, like as if women don't have to worry about getting raped in the hallways a few floors below them. And I mean, truth be told, like selfishly at that moment, I wasn't even thinking about anyone else on the ship except myself, because in that moment I realized like, oh, that experience that I wanted to have on a cruise ship, that international adventure, it was happening. I just wasn't going to have it. So I got off the boat and went home, saved up enough money so I could go backpacking in Australia for 3 months, and never stepped on a cruise ship since.
Amazing, right, you guys? I knew... I've been on a couple of high-end cruises, and I know that the staff is always very specifically, whether depending on the department, but you know, it could be Filipino or British or, you know, whatever, but they definitely like have sailing. Do you say sailing? No, you say cruising. They have cruising down. Like these companies, the big ones, they really know what they're doing. How to, you know, have that floating hotel for whatever it is, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. Anyway, interesting stuff. Thank you guys so much for listening. I always really appreciate it. And don't forget to check out my Life in 3 Songs. I've got Jimmy Pardo on this week, comedian Jimmy Pardo, and you're going to love when you hear his song choices. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning into Storyworthy this week. And on behalf of the very talented writer, Kristine Kimmel, my name is Kristine Blackburn, saying, make it a storyworthy week.
Thanks for joining us on the Storyworthy podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.
Wells Fargo presents one of the surest ways to grow your money. A Wells Fargo CD account, where you can earn a 5.00% annual percentage yield on an 11-month term with a minimum opening deposit of $5,000. Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/CD rates to open a CD account and start growing your savings with us.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.